All right, Cary, welcome to the Football Excellence Podcast. How you doing, brother?
It's great to be here, Will. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So let's just get right into it. You are the Director of Business Development Manager for the NFLPA Inc., which is the marketing and licensing arm for the NFLPA. And I want to start the conversation off talking about what the actual role is of the NFLPA and the Players Association, because I think a lot of people are confused about its role with NFL players, with the NFL. It's a separate entity. So, let's just discuss what their role is.
Yeah, well, there's so much to it. I think first and foremost, again, for a lot of your listeners that really want to become NFL players, or they have a dream of becoming pros, it's important to distinguish first and foremost that the NFLPA, NFL Players Association, is the union for all active NFL players, right? So we are not the NFL, and as you probably I'd seen in the news recently that we were working with the NFL on a collective bargaining agreement that joins us together. We are first and foremost the union for all active players. 60 plus years now that we've been the union for our members, the employees of the league, and essentially representing their rights just like any other union would do, workers union would do. So sort of between the sidelines, if you will, protecting, of course, their it's brand protection, it's salary cap administration, making sure that their agents are regulated, health and safety, their benefits, sort of spanning the spectrum of what we provide our membership and our men. And then 25 plus years ago, we said, okay, how can we? We're providing for them in this way. How can we help them monetize and help commercialize those rights that we own, we manage for them? And so we launched NFL Players Incorporated. So NFL Players Inc., which you mentioned is the for-profit licensing and marketing arm. And so essentially, when players enter the league, they sign their group licensing assignment or their group licensing rights over to the NFLPA, in which we go out and we pursue commercial revenue-bearing opportunities on their behalf with group licensing rights, which we define as 6 or more players. So, I guess the difference being, of course, all players individually have their agents, have their marketing representation, and they can go do endorsements and sponsorships. But we go out in a group on a group basis. So the easiest example of that is EA Sports and Madden, right? So we essentially go out and pursue more opportunities that are similar. Not all are on that level, but then we also manage the process for them in terms of the payments and the royalties that go to players and then the collective group of NFL players. So that's the high level. There's a lot of folks that I work with, and I support me. I support them that are across the sponsorship landscape. We manage a lot of, the NFL has their sponsors, so the Bose, the Microsoft, the PepsiCos of the world, and a lot of those agreements have player activations within them, and so we manage a lot of that, whether that's activations, appearances, or that is the passive rights, and that's on product and marketing and packaging that we approve and we manage for the NFL and the clubs.
That's phenomenal. I mean, there's so much involved there, and it's hard to really grasp it all. And so, I mean, like you said, you guys work with massive companies. I mean, I was looking at the website, Visa, AWS, Marriott, Gatorade, these massive brands. So how is the NFLPA Inc. maximizing the revenue potential for the NFL players via those partnerships and sponsorships?
Yeah, sure. So I think for us, first and foremost, it's about identifying it's sort of being a filter for a lot of those opportunities where, the sponsors are saying, well, okay, we're paying a lot of money for these, for the NFL rights, and which include, player rights, and how do we activate on those, right? So, I won't go into all the details of how, there's highlighting fees and different things that, the differences between premium royalties and shared royalties, or equal share royalties. But so first and foremost, we're acting as making sure that the partners are using their name and likeness the right way. And then, of course, identifying new opportunities outside of our 70, almost 80 plus partners. Outside of that, to be able to go and say, hey, have you thought about working with NFL players, not only from a licensed product standpoint, but from an activation standpoint, and helping partners and prospective partners identify all these different ways that the NFL players can help sell your products and services to consumers and of course fans, right? So that's
right.
That's of course, and then we work with we have an entire player services team that's dedicated to bringing opportunities more on an individual basis to agents and marketing reps that they may not have otherwise. And then on the same end, we help sort of navigate a lot of that for marketing reps as well. We have events that players and players can earn revenue from, and all the above. So that's sort of, those are some of the ways, of course, that we go out and we pursue. We help players monetize. And then of course there's tons of different around the building and a lot of the stuff that I'll put it into two categories. One being sort of just brand building, right? Like how to build your brand off the field. Where there's a ton of different, learnings and different things that my colleagues do outside of NFL Players Inc. And then also from just a career and leadership and financial wellness standpoint. It's not just saying, hey, how can we go out and pursue more appearances for players and get them on more products? It's about as entrepreneurs, as businessmen themselves, how do they manage those finances? How do they manage that money? And sort of looking maybe outside of their NFL careers for I guess financial opportunities as well, and helping them manage that. So there's a ton of we do.
Right. Well, and even on that end of the spectrum, I mean, the NFLPA, one thing that I wasn't aware of until I started talking with you more several years ago is the actual career development, like you touched on, transitioning from a professional football career to what's next in life. And, so talk about some of the programs that you guys have in place and why the education is important, because as we know, sometimes football is all these guys know. And so transitioning to the next phase of their life, can be incredibly difficult when they lose the only thing that they've been doing for the last 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's something that, I don't necessarily, I mean, of course it's super important. I work with, we have a players and advisory committee. So a lot of the guys that are involved there are I'll shout out Brandon Copeland, who's one that's, and a few other guys, Brandon Copeland, Kelvin Beecham, Marcus Colston, and I don't want to not shout out all of them, but a lot of those guys, are sort of player to player. There's that there's that angle. Players that are supporting as sort of as mentors, right, to other players. And then of course, first and foremost, it's we have our it's called the Trust, right? And so it's an entire staff that's dedicated to supporting former players and help them transition out of the league. And there's a list of long list of different benefits that we provide: financial wellness, leadership, different career opportunities, and then making sure that we, for the players, at the beginning, the middle, and the end of their careers, making sure that we bring them aboard for different programs, different opportunities to help them navigate their careers, and make sure it could be make sure that they know how short of a window it can be, right? And of course, whether that's just your playing career or if there's an injury, managing your money, and making sure that you are. There's a quote. I can't remember who it was from, but you can either live like a king for a few years. You can live like a prince for a much longer time, right? So that's how do you manage that money and making sure the guys do that. So I know that a lot of folks, my colleague Don Davis does great work with his team, this dope team, and does a lot with players on the front end of that throughout their careers.
Well, I know that was a major issue several years back. And I mean, do you think that it's improved the management of money for these NFL players? I mean, do you feel like because of the education of the NFLPA and because of these mentors that you're discussing that guys are getting the picture earlier? Or, I mean, do you still see it as a problem that sweeps the league when guys come in and just a mismanagement of money and then having nothing when they are done?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll mention too, and again, it's not my expertise, but
Right.
we regulate all financial advisors to players as well. We manage that process, making sure that the guys have the right team around them, and so yeah, I think it has. I think players are becoming more educated about it. I think it's changed. I mean, of course, listen. At the same time, players have been waiting a long time to be able to make that type of money and provide for their families and their friends. So there's a lot of hands that are out, and so and players do their best. Of course, we want our players to make sure that they are able to enjoy the what comes with being an NFL pro and that the money that comes with that. At the same time, just managing that. I think it has improved. I think we're doing a ton. Of course, we work with the NFL, a lot of different programs, but I think it has changed. I think players are becoming more educated and sort of understand the responsibility as NFL pros to be able to manage that money and make that last. I think it has.
Good. Well, and getting back to more in line with you guys do. So, in regards to the licensing and the players signing, as being part of the group marketing agreement, is that, or how did you refer to that?
Their GLA.
Yeah, the GLA.
Group licensing assignment.
Yeah. So when they sign the GLA, like, how do you guys distribute those funds? I mean, there's no way that those can be distributed evenly when you got guys, like JJ Watt and these massive names in the NFL, and then you got guys who are just on the borderline. I mean, so like from Madden, how are you guys differentiating who's getting paid what?
Yeah. So I won't go into the exact share of that just because it's for it's for the NFLPA and the players, of course, to know what they're getting. I'll say that there are, it's different between I guess the two tentpoles are one are premium royalties. So players, of course, that are jersey sales, right? So any individual products. Of course, those players are going to get more of a share of that revenue, that licensing revenue or the royalty. But there's also a portion of that goes back to the equal share of players from those sales. What's different from any products that have multiple players, so like a Madden, that is it's referred to as like the Madden check, if you will. So players get this kickback from from the sales of Madden. On an annual basis, we essentially, our licensing team sort of that manages that process in the back end. Of course, with our finance and accounting team, player services team, we help them manage that, and we make it easy for them to say, hey, here's what the products that with your likeness generated. There's a kickback to that. I will say that there is a percentage of those sales, of course, as a NFL Players Inc. is a for-profit licensing marketing arm. One for the players, making sure, but also for the union as well. So players they pay their membership dues to be part of the NFLPA, of course, as employees, but that's making sure that goes to sort of a war chest, if you will, in the event of a lockout or or anything like that. The percentage of revenue that we bring in helps fund NFL Players Inc. as well. So that's what keeps the lights on in the building. So there's a percentage. Yeah, that's sort of it. Becomes complicated, but that's I guess the high level of how we manage that process for players. And again, I'm on the front end of that, so making sure we negotiate the right terms and making sure that we uphold the value of NFL players and then their name, image, likeness rights.
Right. Well, it just seems like it may be difficult for me to try to distinguish, let's say a Julio Jones receiver from a no-name receiver, and how do you pay those guys differently? Or, guys who, maybe players who play Madden, they want to play with a certain quarterback more often than another one, even though he's not the best quarterback in the league. So it just seems like that would be difficult to try to distribute those funds adequately.
It's true. Listen, if you're a member, you're going to get the same. I mean, so the difference being a lot of the players, like of course Patrick Mahomes, right, is as the cover athlete this past year. He's going to get paid from by EA on a different basis, right, for being the cover athlete for endorsement revenue. But aside from that, players are getting paid equal throughout the game. But yeah, I mean, of course, you're going to be using other quarterbacks in the game more than others, but that's really, I think, that's what as a union, that's what we're about is making sure that it's not just about the top 10% of players, but it's about the collective. It's our core players, and making sure that they're taken care of it as NFL pros.
Excellent. And how has the sponsorship side of it and the licensing side of it been affected from this current coronavirus crisis and everything that's been going on? I mean, it would be devastating, obviously, if the NFL didn't have a season. I pray to God that doesn't happen. But, what is kind of the environment for you guys right now throughout this pandemic?
Listen, I mean, first and foremost, it's about the players and their wellness, right? So between me, between you, between the players as human beings and their families, we want to make sure they're safe and healthy. That's first and foremost. Regardless if there's a season, regardless of what that's doing to the sports industry, sports business industry, making sure that they're safe and they're healthy, and testing protocol in place. We launched an activation, making sure that, of course, there's a virtual off season, with the NFL, making sure that players have a chance to be able to train and different resources to do that. Fitness equipment, regimens, virtual coaching, making sure that they're keeping their bodies prepared and ready. And so it's sort of been this trickle of making different decisions. And again, those are the folks that are smarter than I am at the top, and the leaders that are paving the way and doing a lot for our men. It's been really challenging. I think a lot of questions have been asked. And we of course go as the CDC goes and the guidelines they put out from county to county, state to state. And and that's of course, from a on-field basis, of course, we're going to look at where the NFL shakes out, making sure that we don't rush to get players back on field. Let's give them some opportunities, and especially a timeline of when they can expect to go back and play. I think the other side of that is the sports business industry in general. It's been crazy. You got partners that are digital virtual partners, right, that have digital product, right, e-gaming, esports that are thriving, and they've had more business than they've ever had because of shelter in place, and a lot of players getting a lot of consumers getting on the sticks. And then unfortunately you got some of our partners that really rely heavily on retailers, right, and brick and mortar physical retailers that are having trouble and having to make tough decisions with their staff, their manufacturing processes, and so it's tough. We did take a dip, this last few months, but I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel for a lot of partners, and hopefully we're coming on the other side of this thing.
Well, and that's what's so interesting. Obviously, for the first time in your life and my life, we're getting hit by something that's affecting every person, every company around the world. It's just no way to plan for it. And
I'll just say, we're so fortunate, right? We're so fortunate.
Yeah, exactly.
In this position. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, so fortunate, and it's just interesting because you have companies, like you said, that are thriving right now, like the esports, like Zoom, who went from 10 million users to 200 million in a matter of a couple of months. And then you have other brick and mortar businesses, restaurants, obviously, like you said, more retailer goods that have to make incredibly tough decisions that may not make it through the next couple months. And, from a sports sponsorship side, it makes you nervous because, you may lose some big sponsors, but again, it's using the ones that are thriving to be able to plan for the future. It's all about adjusting right now so you can make it out in the future, right?
Without a doubt. It's it's a really, really interesting time. I mean, there's a lot of a lot of partners that are doing well, I think it's important to we're in an interesting position because we just signed a commercial agreement with the NFL that gives us some great security as a unit for our players from a commercial standpoint, which is great. But yeah, it's really it's tough for a lot of partners at the moment, and a lot of leagues, and I think from a broadcasting standpoint as well. I mean, gosh, you see what how we're a lot of our media partners are making changes, and of course, I think you saw, of course. The NFL draft was an interesting sort of a example of the way that we're changing, right, and have to adapt, and that's what's most important. I think you'll see a lot of sort of on the other end of this. There will be some silver linings of how we do business and the things that that we do from a on-field standpoint, to a broadcasting standpoint, to a commercial standpoint. There's going to be some things that we're potentially better for on the other end. I think you saw a lot of that sort of as a good example of the NFL draft, and getting a chance to see who players are, and getting a chance to see from the team personnel. It was a good example of, I think, probably. Some of the good that potentially is coming out of this, with the majority being really tough. So,
yeah, that was a fantastic move, and it was really, really, really well executed. I'm interested to see how the numbers. Did you hear about the numbers as far as people reached for the draft? I mean, were they able to reach more people, less people?
I think ratings. If I'm not, of course, from an in-person standpoint, there's that was a tough. Not to be able to have it in Vegas, and the fans that are actually there on site, that was a tough blow. But gosh, I don't know the number, the number of viewers, the viewership ratings, for the draft, but I believe it was high. And of course, I understand there's not everyone was waiting for something and be able to get back to the the NFL schedule. But I know the numbers were great for it.
Right. Well, shifting gears really quick back to the collective bargaining agreement. How did you feel about the end result of it? Did you feel like which side won, the NFL or the NFL players? There was obviously give and take from both sides. Just give us an overview of what you thought about how that ended up.
Sure. Yeah. Well, listen, I'm going to leave. There's been a lot of outspoken players. There's been a lot of outspoken, talking heads in the media. I'm going to leave a lot of that to the folks that are managing the collective bargaining agreement and manage that process, and we're really in the trenches negotiating. Listen, regardless of my bias, of course, with the PA, I thought we had a great outcome. And especially the timing of it all was really interesting, right? With of course COVID coming on, and wow, it's probably best that we we have some security here for the, for our membership. And so I know that, there were some players that felt differently. A really close vote. I think of about 60 votes. There was that swung it. So listen, we respect the players. Of course, you respect their decisions and their voting and where they stand. But we got them. I think we got them a great great deal in a lot of different areas. And I think we again, back to the point about we need to first and foremost make sure that we provide for the collective players, right, and not the small percentage at the top. Making sure that the players that the core players are being taken care of. The guys that are seeing a blip in the league, that we need to make sure that those minimum salaries and those guys are taken care of from a benefit standpoint as well. So we did a lot in that area, health and safety wise. We did some great things. So. And through it all, we have J.C. Treader coming aboard as the president of the NFLPA, which we're so pleased to have J.C. with us.
Excellent. So yeah, really quick. I mean, for people that didn't really understand the full grasp of it, what were like the top 3 things that are changing? Let's say from the new agreement.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, a few things, and again, I'm not the expert, from our standpoint, but of course, the extended schedule was one. Of course, the playoff makeup of how the playoff structure is going to change a bit. I think making sure that there's there's an incremental share of revenue. So there's a 1.5 revenue. So from 47 to 48.5, which is significant for revenue that goes back to the players. And so I think those are probably the most, those are things that you see sort of in the news, but there's a list of different, I think from our end, the practice schedule, like how many on-field practices, where that's reduced. And so, making sure that regardless of the 17-game schedule, that the amount of padded practices, the amount of, hits that players are taking outside of regular season games and postseason games, that is significantly reduced. So I think those are sort of the high levels. But from our end, the 1.5 to the share of league revenues going back to the players is significant for us.
It's absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And where do you see the future of these guys' salaries going? I mean, do you feel like it's kind of peaking? Do you feel like it's just a never-ending, uphill climb as far as who's going to get paid more and more? Or like, it just seems like I feel like salaries are justified because these guys are putting their lives on the line. I mean, their lives on the line, literally their bodies on the line, and I mean, they're the most elite athletes in the entire world. But where do you see the base of salaries going in the future?
Boy, well, listen, if the media entities are going to continue to pay, billions of dollars to be able to broadcast games, I think it's going to continue to go up and up. And we're not, for players putting their health and their safety on the line and making that sacrifice, we want to make sure that they're getting compensated as they should. So listen, and again, this is all sort of under the with an asterisk on with COVID and how that's going to change potentially. But I continue to see that increasing. I don't know the numbers exactly, but how it's increased year over year. I think we have. But it's incrementally year over year that it's increased. It will continue to go up. I think as the NFL builds the business, and we're seeing just how popular sports are, and then the folks, from a consumer standpoint, we need our sports just for an overall a wellness, from a wellness standpoint. So it's going to continue to go up. And again, it's making sure that, again, we support players in negotiating those contracts. We support their agents and their representation. We're always going to fight for the best deal, making sure those guys are compensated as they should be. But I think it's going to continue to go up.
Right.
Of course, on the collective standpoint, we're going to continue to keep driving that.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, and so along those lines, I mean, the NCAA, just ruled that players can profit off of their image and likeness. In your opinion, since you're working in that space, I mean, how is that going to affect college football, all sports in college from here on out?
It's significant. Now again, I think from an individual standpoint, players, this is my opinion. It's about time. The collegiate players that have a chance to listen. They're student athletes, of course, but listen. It's about time that they have a chance to be able to get compensated, for the use of their likeness. And then opportunities come from that, right? And I think that'll change the way. Listen, you're seeing the changing tide of players that are making the jump from high school to the G League, right? And they need players looking at that money and saying, hey, that's I'd rather go that route and have immediate compensation rather than going 1 year, 2 year, 3 years through NCAA and not having a chance to profit. So players understand the money that they could potentially make, and that's their decision. I think it's going to change a lot. We're looking into some different ways that we can help support players in that way from a group licensing standpoint. It's come out a lot where it's going to be on an individual basis with players and the opportunities that they're able to potentially go secure. That being said, there's still a lot to be, even though the NCAA comes out and says, hey, there are steps that we're going to take. There's still a long time coming, I think, until the players are getting the fair revenue that they should be. So it's going to change a lot, and I think a lot of people I think the biggest thing is a lot of folks that are representing players and players themselves are thinking about it a lot differently now with some of the steps that the NCAA has taken.
Right, and so obviously what that entails is jersey sales and your jersey getting sold, correct?
But I'm not sure I don't know from a licensed product standpoint. I think it's going to change. I think I think it's mostly from a like more of a sponsorship or sort of an appearance. Like players are able to go have like activations and appearances and sort of like sponsorship revenue. I don't know necessarily about licensed products, but I should. But I don't know if they're actually able to have jersey sales.
Well, that's probably my mistake then. I mean, so that's the next thing I was going to ask, though, is like, can a player get paid to go do a commercial now for Home Depot and get paid?
Players, yeah, that's where they're looking toward. Yeah, I mean, players are getting, they're having, as long as as long as the universities aren't, at least the way I'm understanding, the universities aren't benefiting from that, and from revenue standpoint, players are able to go identify their own individual opportunities. So yeah.
Well, does that change the way that businesses will look at sponsoring the school then? I mean, if you've got a car dealership that can either pay the university to get their logo on the stadium, for example, or if they can pay, their top quarterback to come in and do a commercial online, like, does that take money away from the school actually?
It could potentially. Yeah. I mean, it's going to change, right? I think that there's still, from a game days, from an advertising placement, the game days and the sponsorship revenue, that's still going to be there for the schools, right? And so I think that it'll change. I think you'll see more. I don't know how much that's going to take away from the schools. I mean, the schools and the NCAA making a lot of money right now. I think it will impact that. I just know that there's going to be more opportunities and more revenue in the players' pockets, which is what
we want. Yeah, it's what we want, what we need, and what they've been fighting for. I mean, like you said, it's overdue. And I mean, I'm just thinking about how this is going to affect recruiting and alumni networks with owners of businesses around schools. I mean, does it just make things? Does it make the under the table things just much more obvious and in the open as far as players getting paid? You know what I'm saying?
It's that's why I think there's that's why I mentioned. I mean, there's a lot of questions being asked. There's a lot to come from, and I think that's easier. I think regulating that and making sure that players getting paid under the table. I mean, unfortunately, that's there's been regulations and making sure that from an agency basis, we you never, that's not the way it should be. But I think that it will change sort of how money is exchanging hands, and it'll definitely change players' decision making. Of course, whether that's going to a certain school or going to a certain representation, I think it will change. But that's all to be seen. I'm not. There's a lot that's going to come from it. I think with the majority being for the better.
Well, as we come to the end of the podcast, Cary, I want to talk about you playing international football, quarterback for the Danube Dragons in Austria. Obviously, Podium is heavily involved in international football as the leading recruitment agency. We were heavily involved in media. We host all-star games, camps all over the world, and that's how we started a relationship, was through mutual contacts. What was your experience like in Vienna, Austria, playing, living, and what did that do for your life?
It's life-changing. I mean, and I want to shout out Podium and everything you guys are doing as well. I think it's from the NFLPA standpoint, from NFL Players Inc. We see all this you guys are doing, man, and we've been focused on how we can support our foreign-born players in the league, right? So there's a certain amount of foreign-born players, first, second generation, that we're looking at how we can customize some of our resources specifically for them, how we can sort of reach a future membership, right? And of course, so high school at the collegiate level, and then also making sure that from that standpoint that we're taking a look at that pipeline and making sure that we also have a diverse group that are potentially international players as well. And so there's a lot of opportunities, and we see what you guys are doing at Podium, man, to help bring more awareness about the game, to grow the game beyond borders. I think for us, really quickly, from a Players Inc. standpoint, we're looking at how we can expand our commercial revenue beyond the U.S., of course, in the UK, Germany, Mexico. And how we can get some more player license product down there in Acapulco. So that's it. Listen, back to your question. It was life-changing for me in so many different ways. I think, that transition, for me at a school and playing college ball, that was, I think it was probably easier for some. I knew that I wasn't going to be playing, for long after my career. I didn't necessarily want to coach, but I knew there was something else there. And so it gave me that opportunity to say, okay, what's out there for me? I'm going to go travel the world and give me some time to sort of put a close on my career and enjoy that. And so that's what I did. I played in Vienna, Austria, and it was an opportunity of a lifetime, I think, for me. That the people you meet from a cultural standpoint, I got a chance to see football at its raw, it's at its core, right? So you see these, it didn't have the, we talk about, players and making a decision about where they can go to college and potentially what revenue they're going to earn. You look at, the game overseas, it is, players will pay to play, right? And they're carrying paths from work, from school. And so you see the passion of the game, and that's where I was energized by it, man. I was pumped, and I got a chance to coach some really, really, really talented young players that just didn't have the coaching, the resources around them. You just go, man, there's something here, and then that passion for the game is that's not always easy to come by, and so. That experience for me was beneficial in so many different ways, and I'm passionate about it moving forward. say how we can grow that game, how we can provide more players opportunities to play the collegiate level, play the pro level. I think you're seeing that with the International Pathway Program. You're seeing that with, of course, everything you're doing at Podium with Podium All-Star Game and giving them opportunities just to show what they can do and providing resources around them to help them develop, which is great. So it was a great experience for me, man. It was awesome.
I love to hear that. Well, I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, I always say that athletes that play the game internationally love the sport even more than Americans do because there's no big reward for those guys. Like you said, they're playing a lot of the time. It doesn't bring fame. You're not the cool kid in school for playing American football. So it's such a raw love. And like you said, the kids eat it up. And to be able to coach and be a part of that, it's absolutely a blessing for so many guys. And it's great that you got to be able to experience that.
Yeah, I'm so fortunate. No, and it's just, it's just. I think you find it too, Will. And it's just a chance to. What's your purpose, man? If you can give back to those kids, and of course, there's so many opportunities to do it here in the U.S. Right? There's I think it's unique to say, okay, well, let's take some kids that wouldn't necessarily have that opportunity otherwise, and do it on a national level and bring more. Football is. It's synonymous with life in so many aspects. And so, being able to bring the game to more players and have them understand, the element of sport and all the things that makes you a better man and a better person from football. That's what's important. So, yeah, I mean, it's great. I'll say that I am. I'm a quarterback first and foremost, and so I want to make sure that all players are getting coached up. But I think there's a real need for quarterback coaching. That's really what I'm focused on. I'm passionate about overseas. I think it starts with that position. You see all of the, I was the only American import at the time for the Danube Dragons. And I was quarterback, right? And so how can we get more national players that are quarterbacks? How can we coach at that position? Because you're seeing the amount of just recently this clash to the International Pathway Program. I mean, there hasn't been a quarterback. And there's no foreign quarterbacks in the league until we have a foreign-born quarterback playing the league. I think that's really what will start to change. And you'll see a lot of kids going, okay, I can beat Tom Brady, I can beat Drew Brees, but I can be, that next player who's coming who's coming overseas. I think that's really what's going to change the tide. So I'm focused on that, and would love to work with Podium, work with everybody in that space to help do that.
Yes, no, and that's the thing about the quarterback position is at the quarterback position, it comes. Great quarterbacks come from reps, just get game reps, be able to play and get comfortable and get used to that game pressure. And then having great quarterback coaches at a young age, like that's so important now. And like you said, that's what's missing in Europe is those great QB coaches and reps because they're just not getting them over there. They're not playing until a little bit later in life. And so it's difficult. There's one of the top quarterbacks in the nation, I believe, for the class of 2021, though, is a player out of Schwäbisch Hall, Germany. He's committed to TCU. So he's probably the best bet they've got for a QB getting a shot at the NFL here in the next couple of years.
Absolutely. And I've been following him, and he's a baller, man. So, no, it's coming. And there's players. I mean, again, you know it better than I do, Will. I mean, you're seeing this every single day. But there's talent there. It's just how can we help continue to foster that, give them more opportunities, and give them more visibility from scouts on this side that are saying, okay, well, you can look at the U.S. Of course, I can go to California, I can go to Texas, I can go to Florida. But let's take a look at some of the talent in Germany. Let's take a look at some of the talent in Austria, in the UK. I'll shout out the NFL UK Academy and the work that they're doing. They're putting together on that side. I caught up recently with Will Bryce and their team, and they're doing some great work. And we want to sort of be there as well and see what we can do at the NFLPA to help support that as well. But they're doing great work. Giving players a chance, and yeah, it's great. It's fun. It's fun to see. It's fun to see the growth. There can be more of it.
Yeah, definitely. And along those lines, I mean, that's why it's so exciting for what we're doing with Gridiron Imports. You know, founded by Bjorn Werner, first round draft pick for the Indianapolis Colts, born in Berlin, Germany, stud. And he started a nonprofit organization with Chris Adamson several years back, and they've helped over 100 kids that are now either went to prep school and are now playing college football in the U.S. And these are kids from Germany, Sweden, across Europe, and we joined forces with them to try to elevate that because what they do is fantastic. And
Bjorn's doing amazing work.
He is. He is. And Bjorn himself, not only with the foundation and the level of kids that we're starting to send to the U.S. just keeps getting higher and higher. So I have no doubt that the NFL is going to be loaded with international players here in years to come. But Bjorn, even specifically in Germany, I mean, he's a broadcaster on the on German TV, and he started his own YouTube and podcast, and it's in German, and his podcasts are getting hundreds of thousands of views, and it just shows you how fast this game is growing internationally. It's so cool to just see that happen.
It's huge. No, Bjorn is yeah, of course. There's the work that you're doing with Gridiron Imports and especially Bjorn is a former player, right? It's amazing to see how he built it from the ground up, and you built this thing from the ground up, man. You guys are continuing to grow, so it's amazing the following and the popularity. And Will, you Will and Bjorn. I mean, you guys are examples of just what your case studies for the popularity of the sport overseas, right? And so. I love everything the Gridiron Imports is doing. You guys are doing amazing work, and especially you're also spanning the globe, right? So Germany first and foremost, but gosh, you're getting down and you're doing it in Mexico. You're doing it in different countries. So yeah, and we need more of it. I'd love to work with you and Bjorn, and of course how we can from a high level how we can work with at the NFLPA, working with more of our current players. I'm doing camps back in their native countries, and how we can support them and get them more to what you guys are doing. Because a lot of folks, even more. Bjorn's got a ton of followers on Gridiron Imports. We need more. We need more followers of you guys, and more eyeballs on everything you guys are doing. So it's great for the game.
Well, and make sure you tell Mr. Bryce to get in contact with the Gridiron Imports guys, because they can be a tremendous, tremendous benefit to the academy internationally, I think, as far as getting the top players there and getting them eventually to college in the U.S. But Cary, that was incredible talking with you today, man. It's great to catch up, and I appreciate all the knowledge that you dropped on the NFLPA and NFLPA Inc., and we hope to have you again on the show soon, man.
It is it's an absolute pleasure. Anytime, Will. Thank you so much, and I'm gonna continue to watch everything you guys are doing. Let's make sure we make some things happen with us, and I'm envious down there, and I got something that looks like I may be in Mexico, but I'm certainly not, man. Here in DC, I was telling you it's about 45 degrees in May, so you're getting to the beach later.
Yeah, man, I got quite the quarantine spot, so I can't complain. But anyway, brother, will you take care? That's another episode of the Football Excellence Podcast. Guys, thanks for listening. Please subscribe if you like this podcast, because we have many, many more to come. God bless. Take care.
Thanks, guys.